Breaking news right now, the Turkish offensive in Syria has begun. Turkish warplanes have carried out airstrikes against Kurdish-led forces in northern Syria. Again, this is a live look there in Syria. Turkish troops, we're being told right now, have moved toward the border with Syria as Turkey's President Erdogan announced the start of the offensive just a few hours ago. The move coming after that surprise policy change Sunday night by President Trump withdrawing U.S. troops from the area to make way for Turkish troops to enter Syria. NBC's Matt Bradley is on the ground for us in Erbil, Iraq. NBC's Courtney Kube is at the Pentagon for us. Courtney, let me start with you here. What more can you tell us about this Turkish operation?
So these seem to be the opening salvo, right, of what everyone expects will be a larger Turkish military incursion into northern Syria. So far, there are reports of airstrikes. There's some early reports of some artillery fire as well across the border. This is generally what the U.S. military would call shaping operations. So before they would move into an area on the ground, they'll sort of clear out the area with something that's a little bit less dangerous to their side, to the Turkish military in this case, instead of rolling tanks and armored vehicles and whatnot in with personnel. The big question now is, when will that next phase begin? Will they start actually moving in Turkish, tracked vehicles, tanks and whatnot, and personnel for what would be the next sort of phase of this incursion? The other big question is, just how widespread is this going to be? We know that President Erdogan, the president of Turkey, wants to take an entire, what he's calling safe zone along the border with Turkey and Syria. He's even shown a map. When he was at the UN General Assembly last month, he held up a map that literally showed what the areas that he wants to make a safe zone, where he says that it would provide more security for Turkey because it will protect against any Kurds who he considers to be terrorists from moving into Turkey and presenting a national security threat to the country. So we know that that's the area that he wants to take. The question is, how will he go about it? Will it be a large-scale movement south into Syria, or will the Turkish military move in pockets across the area? That's what we're waiting to see. The other big question is how does the Syrian Democratic Force, the largely Kurdish force, react to this? We know that there are about 60,000 strong in the country. They're now controlling the detention facilities, holding more than 12,000 ISIS fighters. Will those Syrian Democratic Forces move away from that, move north towards the border, towards Turkey, to help defend their brothers and sisters who may be under attack? That's one of the big questions we're watching here today, Craig.
Courtney, I don't know if you have access to these live pictures that we are watching here in Syria. Do you?
I don't know.
Okay. All right. We're going to try.
Are we seeing vehicles move?
We are. We're seeing vehicles move. We've seen a number of military vehicles move as well. There also appears to be some smoke billowing there in the background. I did not know if we knew a little bit more about precisely what we were looking at there. But
we know that Turkey has amassed a number of vehicles, tanks, including tanks, along the border. So the question is just when, where, and how large of a force do they move across? And we might be seeing the beginnings of that right now, Craig.
Mr. Bradley, let me come to you there in Iraq. What's the sense in the region there? I would imagine that there is, and this is a great understatement, but an air of anxiety about what comes next.
Yeah, well, Craig, I mean, other than the fear of a massive humanitarian catastrophe, because what we're talking about here are two U.S. allies clashing in northern Syria. On the one hand, are the Kurds who make up the Syrian Democratic Forces. They're battle-hardened after years of fighting Islamic State. And on the other are the U.S. allies, the Turks, who have a very sophisticated military and a very modern air force. They're going to be clashing in the next couple of days, and it's not going to be pretty. But beyond that, what people here are worried about is exactly what Courtney mentioned. Islamic State has already been making a comeback in several isolated pockets throughout the region. What we could see are some of these Islamic State fighters. There's about 12,000 of them holed up in prisons throughout northern Syria, and then something like 48,000 family members, men, women, children, who are also in sort of detention camps throughout northern Syria. If these Syrian Democratic Forces are distracted, if they walk away from guarding these people in order to fight the Turkish incursion, they could let them go. And then they'll be able to reform the caliphate that was just defeated back in March. And that's not good for everybody. This region has been reeling from Islamic State for the last several years, and they don't want to have to fight them again. The other thing is that they don't want to see a massive fresh wave of refugees and internally displaced people moving out of Syria once again, and not just here into Iraq, but also into Europe, which, just totally upended European politics for several years. So these are the threats that don't just face the Middle East, but really kind of the whole world. Craig?
Matt Bradley there for us on the ground in Iraq, and Courtney Kube there for us in Washington, keeping a close eye on what is playing out in Syria right now. Again, live pictures there. They are 7 hours ahead of us here on the East Coast, just after 6:20 there in this particular part of Syria. Sorry, Connie.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.